think I'm going to start, to be honest with you. There you go. Quiet. So, at the door. What I'm going to talk to you about today is not, I almost feel like an imposter sometimes, because you get to a conference and you follow and you speak around very detailed technical presentations, and when what you're presenting isn't massively technical, doesn't have pages full of codes and flashing lights and bangs and whistles, you almost feel like a bit of an imposter. But part of the point of this talk is because you all have those skills in some ways. Who here's on the bachelor's or the master's in cybersecurity here at Warwick? So quite a few of you. But some of you might not. Some of you might be here because you're thinking about cybersecurity, or because you've been involved in other ways through the Cybersecurity Society, or through just personal interest in doing hackathons and online challenges. One of the things that makes cybersecurity people different from any other computer scientist is the way we think and the way we approach problems. So we don't tend to look at a system as inviolable and as something that's meant to be, that exists in its perfect state, right? If we're well aware that if we're looking at a system, if we go from what the firm wrote in the bid as the perfect system and the perfect solution that they were going to deliver, to what we're actually looking at, we're somewhere outside Plato's cave. We're watching the reflections of the shadows, right? And in those gaps is where we can start to have some fun and start to break things in a nice way, because of course we're ethical and we're professional. And that mindset, that way of thinking about something we're seeing on screen or something we're encountering in life, makes us different, makes us useful, and arguably is the bit that can't quite be taken advantage, can't quite be copied by somebody who's probably spending their Saturday outside with a warm beer on a deck chair, right? Because it's a lovely day out there. I've been told by people who don't wear hoodies in this weather that it's a lovely day out there. When we talk about red teaming, a lot of people go down the route of thinking, well, it's pen testing and it's trying to exploit weaknesses. But the mindset isn't following a set of tests. It's not, how can we find and exploit, okay, I've got this application in front of me, and first of all I'm going to look for flaws in the UX, and then I'm going to go for SQL injections, then I'm going to see if there's any API vulnerabilities, then I'm going to see how it's communicating. No, it's getting yourself in the mindset, inside the head of that person who means that system or the organization behind it harm. It comes from, as a term, it comes from a time in history when there were the Reds and the Blues. And the Reds were kind of Team Soviet, and the Blues were NATO. And so in a war game, the Blues were the good guys and the Reds were the bad guys. And the people playing the Red team would have Kalashnikovs that had been smuggled out of Poland so that they could let everybody hear what they sounded like, and they'd have an understanding of the tactics that were going to be used so that they could maneuver around the battlefield in the same way to have an effect. And these days we talk about a threat actor or a hacker, but it's about the effect they want to have. We can still follow structured frameworks, so I'm not saying it's wrong to explore the UX and then try SQL and then explore the API. Of course not. But what I'm saying is that structure is secondary to the achievement of an objective. And, you know, and we all know some of those frameworks. We all know that if we're simulating certain state level actors, we might want to see how they're documented for their usual TTPs in some of the MITRE frameworks and some of the descriptors that are out there, so we don't stray too far from the course. But more importantly, it's set against defined aims. I want to make that train late. I want to damage that business's reputation. I want to extort a ransom. I think when we're doing it not as the criminal, when we're doing it as a profession, it should also be fun. It should also be something you're quite proud of doing, something that you might not be able to tell your mates down the pub because you've signed a massive inch-thick NDA agreement and you might be subject to the Official Secrets Act if what you're looking at is critical national infrastructure. But if you were allowed to tell them, it would be an awesome story because you've thought of doing something in a new way that's going to catch people out. And your natural prey is the kind of person who thinks that because they've just passed their ISO 27001 audit and because they've got a cyber security budget of £750,000 a year and they're signed up to CrowdStrike still in the room? Yeah, you know, they've signed up to CrowdStrike, right? And they've got a whole load of
You've got that bird in place.
yeah, they've got a whole load of products layered to give themselves security that they are secure. Because you're going to want to find the thing that they've not thought of. I like this. This is how I try and approach things, and it's become the way of working at Loughborough. Although I started using this framework when working with critical national infrastructure. So it's taking threats, and this is for cyber physical systems or cyber social or cyber physical social systems, like the kind of thing you'd find in a smart city. And again, we're remembering that effect can be not necessarily on the system, but on the people or the society behind the system. So at the top, we have the expertise that a lot of you guys have been developing. High understanding, high tech. That threat actor is your hacker or your hacker collective. That threat actor is mobilizing a botnet, is pivoting through a network, is exploiting credentials, is taking advantage of identified zero-day vulnerabilities. They know their stuff and they have a very high understanding and all the technological capability required to take advantage of it. They are the problem of, and they are who most people who work in a SOC, in a security operations center, think of as their natural adversary. And they are juxtaposed with low understanding, low tech. We saw this in the run-up to the Paris Olympics. Somebody decided they wanted to embarrass the French government. They wanted to show that European infrastructure wasn't fully hardened. And they decided they were going to do that by making a lot of the trains into Paris late the day before the Olympics. Now they could have potentially gone down the route of a month-long attack chain, getting inside the digital infrastructure. Instead, they lit fires near the high-speed railway lines, causing alerts due to safety concerns, which delayed the train. Low understanding, low tech can be executed by anybody. Okay, and see those as the two ends of the same scale, right? We can make the train late by hacking the signalling system, or we can make the train late by throwing a bag of bricks on the line. Either way, we've got a 20-minute delay to all trains while either the cybersecurity team work out what's going on, or the men in the big orange coats come and move the bag of bricks. Off to the side, high understanding, low tech. You make the train late because you've taken the time to study the door of the train. And of all those little screw holes down the door of the train, you know which one's got the sensor for detecting when something's jammed in the door. And as you get on, or preferably off the train, the chewing gum you've had in your mouth, you rub into that sensor hole as hard as you can. So the whole system goes, hold on a minute, the doors won't close. Something jammed here, this is dangerous, we can't leave the station. Particularly effective if you can work out an exploit like that. Because the cybersecurity team will not see it as a cyber problem. And the law enforcement and physical security team won't see it as a problem. That evening in a different pub, Mrs. Miggins will be talking to her friends and she'll be saying, you know what, Gladys? It took me 20 minutes with a toothpick to get that bloody chewing gum out that hole. These kids don't know the trouble they cause. Same effect. And then increasingly in this age of AI, we have low understanding but high tech. This is the superpower of Batman, right? I'm rich. You don't need to, now in 2025, be a genius hacker to have some of the same effects. You can hire a hacker. Or if you know the right place to look on the dark web and you've got a spare, I think they're currently running in at about 1.2 Bitcoin. You can buy a fully loaded box server, complete with LLM, complete with, that can be instructed in English. I would like you to compromise this domain. I would like you to try and steal as much information about these products from this organization. And you hook that box into the internet and it runs with some effect. And if you're rich enough and you can afford 4, 5, 6 of them, then you will still win. So that helps. And somewhere in that is the role you're going to try and play. I'm going to take you through some of the work we've been doing over the last year. So one of the things that we do a lot and have done historically is look at critical national infrastructure and connected places in the UK. As a paper-based exercise and as part of work with the Digital Twins Network Plus, we looked at 10 connected places around the world, 10 smart cities, and had a look at their publicly available data sets and the functionality presented to end users. And without going down a high-tech option, looked at what threat actors could do with them and how they were increasing the vulnerabilities of those places. Now, one of these is a UK example, and you can try this yourself when you go home. So, Line Search Before You Dig is a wonderful service, and it's designed to stop building contractors putting a shovel or a JCB blade through a gas main, a water pipe, or an electricity pylon. Check what's under the ground before you dig. With a non-Gmail, non-Hotmail, non-Outlook email address, you can you can make a request of that system, and it will dump mapping for up to a 20-mile radius on you. So if you give it a postcode of BS11AA, it will give you the entirety of Bristol. Okay, and you can repeat that for Coventry or Nottingham with an NG1, right? It comes out on an automated system straight from the relevant distribution network operators as searchable vector-drawn PDFs. So the next stage is you go to that and you type in police or stadium or football, and all of a sudden you can find where the substations are and where the gas mains are and the water valves are, or prison, to turn off the utilities to major facilities on which we all rely, or to cancel a sporting fixture, or to cause, again, some kind of political embarrassment. We'll ignore the Singapore one for time, but the Tokyo one was particularly interesting. So countries like doing this. They had their Olympics coming up and they wanted to make everybody feel really welcome in Tokyo. So they opened up all of their live transport data, ranging from passenger counts, scheduling, locations, meteorology, for everything, buses, trams, trains, local air, ferry. And it's all still there now. You can go to the Tokyo Data Channel and it's all still live. It's all totally refreshed. One of the winners of the competition was the Tokyo 3D map. You couldn't use the Tokyo 3D map in the UK because the Japanese take their trains quite seriously. And the minute a train is more than 4 seconds late, it flashes bright amber to let you know. That wouldn't work in the UK. The whole map would just be strobing at you all the time, right? But you can see exactly where every single piece of public transport vehicle is live. And you can access the CCTV cameras for a lot of the stations. Can anybody see a problem with that? Obviously, if you're visiting Tokyo and you're trying to work out how to get around and which services aren't crowded, and it's really nice, right? It's really easy. But how would a threat actor take advantage of that?
There could be stalking concerns associated with the CCTV around the city.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good. Nobody else is on his Instagram, are they? Okay, good, but that's not bad, yeah?
We went for like some kind of terrorist threat, so looking for blind spots, looking where people are going naturally, what times they're leaving at, when to find maximum populations, that kind of thing when they're leaving from peak time.
Yeah, best target and best time of target. So that would be my worry as well. And part of the reason, I could show it to you actually. Let's see if I can work out how to. Is this going to work? No, it's not because I got browser. Yes. This will show it to you. Go away. I know I've never used this computer again. Here's where we find out how slow your IT is here. So this is 12:23 in the morning in Tokyo, so we might not see much. There we go. So they are 1 minute late, and that driver is going to go home and cry himself to sleep. Live CCTV. Obviously, if we were at a different time of day, we'd be getting better visuals here. But it makes my point for the kind of data available. Now, where this gets really cute is actually in 1995, there was a sarin gas attack on the Tokyo Underground. A group of Japan's answer to the extreme right wing with a little bit of nutty pseudo-religion thrown in for good measure. Killed 13, and some people are still living with consequences of that attack. Now, just as a thought exercise, imagine instead of getting onto the underground with a poisonous gas and releasing it at a time when you thought might be a good time to release it, you had with you a smartphone that told you you were on the most populated train in the city, just as another train was passing it in the tunnel, part of the tunnel network with the worst ventilation. What happens to those casualty numbers?
Spike. Yes. Stupid, right?
Yeah. Now the question becomes, because this doesn't feel like a cybersecurity problem, right? This is more of an intelligence problem, but it's the same mindset. And actually the system we're looking at is still a digital system. It's a cyber-physical system with social impacts, but it is a cyber system. The data that's being shared is being done so without necessarily an eye on the risks associated with it. We need to think about the nth order effect. So a lot of people spend their lives looking down at their screens. And this isn't a criticism at all. Although I've just seen one person quickly hide their phone, right? Because a bit of guilt. But the world continues to turn when something happens. So it's not just a case of, and let's imagine that this was group of ethical hackers in Germany a few months ago released the methodology for this because they've been trying to, a bit like we're struggling with our smart meter legacy issues as we move away from 2G to 3G to 4G smart meters. Germany has similar problems. And they published the full methodology for a compromised attack on their entire electricity network based on taking advantage of features in old smart meters. Well worth a read. Okay, you can compromise a smart meter. Great, have a cookie. It isn't about compromising that smart meter, or at least not only that. Because what you then do, because you've messed with it, and this isn't my analysis, the German team quite clearly knew this, and they were explaining this, that with a big enough botnet of smart meters, the second order effect is you've just taken out the country's ability to know what electricity is going to be needed when. So you have two choices. You're either going to have brownouts and blackouts because you're not generating enough, or you're going to go, sod it, we don't know what's needed, let's ramp up all the generation and therefore burn that gas, burn through that coal, burn through those resources. All the way down the line, months later after that attack, everybody would be sat there going, well, why is my electricity bill so expensive? And the answer is because you're paying for whatever repair work and whatever investigation work and whatever extra resources were burnt during that incident. So you can have now imagine the kind of person who'd want to do that, right? Given that, we're talking about Germany, but the leaders of Western Europe are currently in Kiev sending a message to Vladimir Putin saying, you've got a couple of weeks to either stop it or we're going to escalate. And so where's that motivation coming from? Where's the motivation to do that kind of thing? The mindset doesn't stop at the screen. It goes on to those other effects. Is this a cyber problem? Anybody want to guess where I took this photo? What chain of shops? Go on, here's where we see how many of you can guess my class from accent.
Co-op.
Yep, Co-op. Co-op this week. It is actually, the logo is actually in the picture if you pay attention. I was wondering if anybody was going to go Marks and Spencer's and completely get wrong how much I could afford to spend on a banana. So, Co-op this week, right? This is a cybersecurity problem. Those shelves are empty because of a cybersecurity problem. We've all seen that. I hope you've all seen the newspaper coverage where Co-op are doing things like, really basic things like insisting their staff don't have password 123 and maybe making people actually turn their cameras on for meetings so that they know they're not a hacker, just pretending to be them, while they try and get things back up to speed. The cybersecurity incident was a week ago, okay? That's the incident. But when did things go wrong? How long was the tail on this hack? At what point did somebody use the same password and email combination for a special offer web phishing email that they've been sent, or on a completely different website that's been part of a data breach? Months, potentially. We've already said what the cyber team are publicly doing, and a lot of it is very, very basic cyber hygiene. Turn your bloody cameras on. No, Brian, you do need to wear clothes when we're in meetings from now on. Right? They will have had that conversation with somebody. It's probably a middle-aged bloke. Brian might have been a stretch, but I'm fairly sure it will be a middle-aged bloke who's now sad that he has to wear a shirt for the first time in 2 years since COVID. The failure was not just a cybersecurity failure, not just a failure on whoever's password they actually used to get onto the systems, or whoever's device was left unlocked, or whatever the attack method was. It was a failure of organisation and culture. One of the other speakers earlier in today was talking about how when he communicates with management, if people are like, well, we'll accept that risk, he just wants them to put it in an email so that, you know, at least it's documented that they've accepted that risk as part of the audit process. At some stage, somebody will have either accepted this as a risk, or they will have failed to imagine this as a risk. And arguably that actually means that the cyber team were too busy running the SOC and not spending the time thinking through what could go wrong. Because what could go wrong when the shelves are that empty, and that's the dairy section? Well, Co-op pride themselves on buying directly from farmers, and hence Co-op, right? So how many dairy farmers in Yorkshire are going to suddenly find that this year they can't afford a family holiday, or that they have to sell half the farm, or that Daisy has to go to the glue factory slightly earlier? Yeah? Because that's the nth order effect. You laugh, but that's down that chain. If you're in a village and your only shop is the Co-op and you've got young children, what are you putting in the lunchbox? If you're in a village and you have diabetes and you take good care of balancing out your diet, is somebody going to end up rushed to hospital in a diabetic coma because somebody at Co-op didn't say to their boss loudly enough or in a clear enough way, telling the story, this could go wrong like this? This is where it starts. This is upstairs. Does anybody know where this is? It's upstairs. It's in room 256 upstairs. And this is one of your team's, or one of your university's little trophy cabinets. You know, you've got the plaques from all the different Chinese universities who've given you like a little coin and stuff. And what's fun is that cabinet's locked. And when you look inside the cabinet and up, there's the key, right? That willingness to walk through life looking for where people have left the key lying about is a big part of the way we need to think. And then communicate it on. Okay? And I pointed this out to one of your team, one of the team running the conference today. And I said, I'm going to use this photograph because it makes the point really well. And you know what they said? Oh, that happens all around the university. It makes the dusting easier. So there's no point having a lock. That cabinet is not locked. That cabinet is not secure. And that's, you know, it's one glass cabinet to the glass fridges in Co-op to the bigger challenges we were talking about with the connected smart cities. You need to imagine this. You need to be walking through life looking for these holes, not just when you're on the screen completing an assignment or performing a technical pen test, but as you go through. Because that's when you start to change the game a little bit. So this is, the Parliament have POST, Parliamentary Office for Science and Technology. And their job is to get members of Parliament and members of the House of Lords and their advisors up to speed on technical issues. So this is digital twins. This is my area. And I ended up advising on this one. It's a little article and then some training opportunities for MPs who are going to be involved in the Cyber Resilience Bill to learn about this stuff. And they get other briefings on AI, other briefings on malware, all these topics that we become the expert in. But it's only when you find the voice necessary to communicate those risks to those people that life gets easier. Because otherwise you're just in that SOC and 10 alerts, 20 alerts, 50 alerts. What the hell is happening here? Well, the answer is that some genius, and we saw this with the electric padlocks earlier, with the Bluetooth padlocks. Some genius has gone, well, that looks a good idea. Let's push that to market. And the example earlier with the Bluetooth padlocks seemed kind of cute, right? Because, we can buy this from Amazon for 10, 15 pounds, and then we can hack it. Oh, long enough ago that I'm going to risk telling you this. I worked for a company, I did a little bit of contracting for a company that did manage the air conditioning for data centers for banks and telcos. And there are three, and they did the management layer, the software and the temperature sensors. And therefore they needed to be able to connect in and integrate with all the different air conditioning blowers on top of all the different server racks so that they could deliver an energy efficient cooling solution. In the UK, there are three big manufacturers and of these air conditioning racks. Airedale and Mitsubishi do them, and one other. And of the three, the default back-end password was the postcode of the company's headquarters, 1234, and a blank field. So, and of course, before the firm I worked came in, people with data centers were just buying these things, sticking them on top, turning the blower to 90% and not connecting to them. But after a while, they started to become part of an IoT system that managed the heating and delivered operational efficiencies and cost savings. They're great. And I remember writing the manuals thinking, this is going to end badly. In 2017, NatWest went, and therefore all of the Royal Bank of Scotland group, went offline for about 4 days. People's mortgages didn't get paid, people's house purchases fell through, people got threatened by debt collectors, the whole 9 yards, right? And it would appear that one of the problems that kicked that all off was a failure in cooling management systems. Because servers get hot, right? So if you turn the AC off, they melt. You didn't have to hack the bank's system. You had to know that one of the three big manufacturers in the UK had their password as 1, 2, 3, 4. And then just push out the relevant instruction. And somebody did. So you've got to get beyond the pen testing and certainly beyond reacting to stuff to where you're actually getting people to imagine those stories. You know, we joke about password 1, 2, 3, and therefore the final part of this is when we consider, and this is one for maybe the staff members in the room as well. We've got you're all on a lot of the guys at the front are on an NCSC accredited degree program. Yep. Which means that the way you're taught and the content you're delivered is based around what they call the CyBOK, the Cybersecurity Body of Knowledge. Now, the diagram is the NCSC's diagram around it. The work was originally done by Bristol University, and it lists all the things they think you should know to be a cyber professional with a relevant body of knowledge, and at the point where you get your degree, and Warwick University hand you a degree that says, congratulations, you've got a Bachelor's of Science in Cybersecurity, and it's NCSC accredited, you will have, during the course of your programme of study, gone through that and ticked off all those boxes. Sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times, but you will have ticked off all of the things that you see here. Web and mobile security, software security, the software life cycle, formal methods, a bit of cryptography. Great, right? But what I would encourage you to do is get better at the things that aren't on there. So not on there is communication skills. Communication skills of advocacy, of telling the story of what happens when it goes wrong. And what happens, let's think of it as something really simple like an SQL inject. What happens when it goes wrong is not the SQL injection. You can be quite clear about this, that's the method. But what happens is your customer data is stolen or corrupted and that's step 1. And then step 2 is, and now legally you have to write to every one of your customers and tell them you were breached. And you are going to lose a section of those customers forever because you've now lost their trust.
You'll have to pay a fine most likely.
And you may have to pay a fine if, in the opinion of the ICO, you weren't robust enough in safeguarding that information, or you didn't meet the breach reporting deadlines, which are actually quite strict because it's not working days. If you want to take down somebody's company really, really well, Thursday night before Easter weekend, because then you've got 3 bank holidays in a row and a weekend, data breach them. Because who can tell me about what's the deadline for reporting a breach?
2 days.
72 hours.
72 hours.
72 hours. No working hours or working days, or so congratulations, you do that on midnight on that Thursday and it's Good Friday, so most of them are off, and then it's a Saturday, so none of them are really paying attention to their phone because they're dealing with a hangover, and then it's Easter Sunday and they're at their nan's. Well, congratulations, that's your 72 hours. We've not even got onto the fact that Monday is also a bank holiday. You've just got that company a fine. You want to put somebody out of business with cyber skills. Don't, obviously that'd be deeply unethical. But you want to use your cyber skills to destroy a company. Just breach them on the Thursday before Easter. Really is that simple. Or Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve when Christmas Day is a Friday. And that's it. That's your 72 hours gone. So, but you see how much stronger it is when you tell that story rather than just go, it's a 72-hour limit. Because all of a sudden you're all imagining, oh yeah, I would. I'd be at lunch with my nan. You know, how many of you have lunch with an elderly relative over Easter? Yeah, it's real now. Interrogation, asking questions. And I nearly wrote questioning strategies when I wrote this slide, but I do mean interrogation. I mean finding out what the actual answer is when something's stress tested. Not the answer people think they want you to hear, but the answer they're going to give you when it's and then what, and then what, and then what. Non-digital competencies. So the NHS are actually much better at this than Co-op. When a hospital trust gets hit, they go back to paper records very, very quickly.
But NHS got a big scare.
But also, partly, the NHS can't afford all the latest systems, so a fair amount of the stuff's still paper anyway. But an awareness of what those failover options are and how they might get implemented. Because it's all well and good saying, well, we'll keep the digital systems safe because that's our job, we're cybersecurity. But at some point, find the opportunity to listen to the guy who was in charge of cybersecurity for Maersk when they got hit. And he tells it much better than I will. So do, if ever he's speaking, attend. But the only reason Maersk weren't wiped off the map as a company is because when their global systems got hit, there was one of their ops centers somewhere in West Africa was experiencing a power cut as this massive cyber attack ripped through all their networks. So it was off. And luckily, somebody realized that that was a good thing and phoned them up and was like, please, no, don't turn it back on. No, don't turn it back on. No, it's fine. We know you've had a power cut. Leave it alone. And they'd have done that, right? And then they flew the company jet out to this location in West Africa where somebody, were not much older than yourselves, boarded the aircraft with the physical drives from the server rack out there with the only copy of the company's data still intact. And the way he tells it is apparently this lad sent a selfie from the in front of the company private jet holding this server rack. And maybe it's time to discuss a pay rise. But they were aware of their non-digital options. They were aware of what to look for. they had that kind of heads up awareness that it wasn't all about what they were seeing on their screens, because their screens had gone blank. And that's what got them through it. Impact assessments. So what happens down down that chain of attacks? These are things that aren't necessarily taught to you because they're not always right in there in the SciBoc. And you know what? Getting through it in 3 years is hard work. Getting through it in a 1-year master's program, because you're transferring in from another discipline, is very, very challenging. But based on everything we're encountering, if we're going to be cyber resilient, not just cyber secure, then it needs to be part of how you think about yourselves, right? You're not a cybersecurity professional because you've got the gear. You're a cybersecurity professional because of what's up here. Oh, that rhymes. I wasn't expecting to do poetry today, but I'm gonna keep that one. There are other approaches to thinking about being a pen tester, being a red teamer, and some of these come from different areas. So I always put Oxford up there as just Oxford because some of them can be a bit smug, you know, even by the standards of a Russell Group university, right? And they are very, very good at doing paper-based, literature-based red teaming, and their approach works. Their approach does a lot to inform standards, a lot to inform whatever the next iteration or answer to ISO 27001 is for a particular tech stack or a particular. But they miss, a lot of the time, because they're looking at what's published and what's out there, they're missing the truly creative. There are hardware-driven approaches. There's a team, one of my favourite teams is at Queen's University Belfast, and they are very, very good at looking at things like thermal variations in the little tiny chunk of memory that sits alongside a processing core to work out what data is passing through it and what maths is being run. I don't understand it, it's physics. It's amazing that they can do it, and they are also cybersecurity. There are approaches based on mapping stuff out. So think of MITRE, right? MITRE is effectively a taxonomy. Is it this? Is it that? Okay, we've got a DDoS. It's this type of, it's a botnet motivated DDoS executed through IoT. That fits with the threat profile of the following actors, boom. And we know, because we're in the pharmaceutical industry, we're highly likely to be hit by those people. So we're going to, with an intent of data theft. So we're going to spend some of our £5 million cybersecurity budget directly on that kind of endpoint detection to counter that. Great. But again, it's not enough. When we start to look at mindset, the best paper is Conti and Caroland. And it's an innocuous little IEEE paper. But at the time of writing, they were running US Cyber Command for their government. And they were, hacking other countries on behalf of the United States. They might know what they're talking about, right? And off the back of their work came a few things. One came the gradual emergence of this idea of cyber persistence. Have anybody encountered that phrase, cyber persistence? So cyber persistence is where you live in the face of your adversary. You live always on, always active, always forward. Yeah? It's like when we're boxing a bigger guy, we don't put our guard here, we bring our guard forward and up. So they've got to work round it. And you're always there and you're always moving. And from their work came, from that little paper, came a lot of the developments in how the Americans, and by extension the rest of the Five Eyes community, started to see cyber warfare as something you could actually get quite good at, and something that, and it became, and it was what kick-started the kind of the Western answer to the Gerasimov and hybrid doctrine, which was published at about the same time. But, and I keep doing this and then coming back to the but. Gerasimov was 2013, but the real takeaway from that from me is the focus on the mindset. Because I should be able to take anybody in the room and drop them in central London in pretty much just your underpants. And by the end of the day, you should be safe, comfortable, and be playing the game with the systems around you. And you should be able to warn others about how those techniques and tricks can be executed. I hope that helps. I hope that gives you some hope. Some of you might be at the end of a cybersecurity degree and thinking, you know what, I never want to do cybersecurity ever again. Because that happens a lot, right? It cuts both ways. I was talking to somebody at lunch who is a chemist who's just done a chemistry degree and wants to do cybersecurity. She now hates chemistry. 4-year integrated masters will probably do that for you. But there are routes to take this. There are routes that you can become that policy advisor, you can become that investigator or that intelligence operative or that logistics supply chain manager, but still with that eye on, and what if it goes wrong? What's the worst that can happen? What will the problem child do? What will the threat actor do? If anybody's interested, the QR code on the board, this is a bit cheeky because I'm at Warwick, but why not? At Loughborough, we are writing a new master's that launches this October. I'm helping write the foundation module, so this mindset, this idea of getting forward and delivering resilience that way is something that's going to be in its DNA. That being said, if you've already got an NCSC accredited bachelor's degree, my career recommendation is do not fall for the sales pitch of a master's. Go, pick one of two things to do. But academically, your next thing should probably be a PhD. Either now, and make yourselves known to your professors and your supervisors that you're interested, because they'll probably have something, right, through one of their corporate contacts. Or go out to industry, get 3 or 4 years experience, then come back. And it's never too late to do that. So this guy of this age is doing exactly that. So I left it till I was 40 to start mine. And my first degree was religious studies, and cybersecurity didn't really exist. The first frauds and digital crimes I was part of, I always say investigated, and actually it was perpetrated. But this isn't recorded, is it, by any chance? Involved fax machines, and involved taking the paper out of the bin next to the fax machine, because when a fax got sent through, quite often there'd be a blank page at the end. But it'd have all the same streaks on it and all the same weird markings. So you'd take that paper out the bin, and then you'd go to the photocopier or the printer and you'd print whatever you wanted. And then you'd be like, yeah, they faxed it through. And now, this was 25 years ago and in a different country. I'm not telling you which one. But how different is that to forging email headers? How different is that to spotting that something's been left unlocked on an Exchange server and having an AI forge an ecosystem of messages? It isn't. It's actually the same technique in action. I have got a system of authenticating through a vulnerability, and I am superimposing my desired message onto it in order to have an effect. Expense claims. And that's the same methodology. And in 20 years' time, when I'm approaching retirement, I'm looking at quantum key distribution now, and ways to compromise quantum key distribution. You think, what the hell is this? It's not even physics the way we learnt it at school. But it's actually the same stuff. And what ties it all together is that way of thinking, which we all share, or we wouldn't be doing this on a Saturday. Okay, so thank you for your time today. I hope that helps. And I know for a fact that I'm going to encounter some of you I've met before, some of you I will meet again as we go round the circuit of B-sides conferences, or there are only a limited number of good employers in this sector, really. And it becomes quite incestuous. You'll go to work for IBM and you'll be working with somebody at BAE Systems, then you'll leave there and you'll go to CrowdStrike and you'll have a friend at Darktrace, and it becomes a small world. So,
Like a family.
yeah, like the Addams family sometimes. Mentioning no names, right? Thank you for your time today, and I hope that closes the day down nicely for you.